Hi everybody, it's Doreen and welcome back to the final card, which is day 20 of Christmas cards with the Cricut. This is the final card for my series, so let's get started so I can show you how I made it. But before we get started, I want to let you know where I got the idea from. I got this idea from Kathy from Paper Phenomenon. She did a Ustream class on a mini album and it was called Lady Kris Kringle or Sexy Kris Kringle, something like that. So rather than making the mini album, I decided to make a sexy boot instead. And this is going to be for my best friend. She and I love shoes and boots. And I'm also going to be making one for my mother because my mother also loves shoes and boots. So let's go ahead and get started and I'll show you how I made it. Okay, the first thing I needed to do when making this card was I needed to make my boot. Now Kathy does give you the cut file on her blog, which is paperphenomenon.blogspot.com. And she gives you the cut file. This cut file is from the Forever Young cartridge. However, as I said before, she did make this as a mini album and it was rather large, so I couldn't use her cut file to put on my card. So what I did was I went to the Forever Young cartridge, and on the handbook, it's on page 50, and it's this boot right here. And because I wanted to make it wider at the top of the boot, and I only wanted to cut one, I used my gypsy in order to do this. So basically, I took and I set the height for 6.75 and I set the width for 9.41. And then I used that hide contour feature and I hid one of the boots and only cut out one. And to make sure that I got the boot the size that I wanted, I went ahead and did another layer and cut out made a card using the Ashley's Alphabet cartridge, and I cut out this card right here, which is on page 67. And then I kind of took that after I measured how I wanted it, and I made this height 6.75 and the width is 9.41. And then I took my boot and I just kept maneuvering it over until it fit where I wanted it in the card. And then I went on ahead and I cut the boot out. So once I got the boot cut out, I cut this in just some plain vanilla cardstock. And then I went ahead and used my deep cut blade and I cut using a cereal box just so I could have a heavy backing. And I cut the exact same size. Then once I did that, I went ahead and I took a piece of cardstock, and the cardstock measures, let's see, 1 3/4 by 1 3/4. And this cardstock was from the Brenda Walton K & Company cardstock. And it actually was the cardstock that had the Santas on it from my previous video from the money card holder. It was Santa's on one side and then this red cardstock on the other side. And I then took after I cut the 1 3/4 by 1 3/4, I took my doily punch by Martha Stewart and punched out the trim at the bottom here. And then I just took that and covered over the top of the boot. After I did that, and I just covered it along here on the edges, and it's gonna hang over. But what you're gonna do once you've got everything on is you're just gonna take your X-Acto knife and go around and trim everything down. So then I took some lace fabric that I picked up at Joann's, and it's just some fabric that looks like this, and I adhered that to the boot, and I actually used my ATG gun to adhere it. And even though there's little holes in here, I just kept rubbing it in until I got all of the glue in the holes off, so it wasn't so sticky. And then after I did that, after I got the fabric, I just laid it out. I cut a 6x6 square and just laid it out on top of the boot. And then once I had it all adhered to the boot, I then took my X-Acto knife and I went around and trimmed all the way around. And then I trimmed up here at the top. And then to make my edges so that they were even, I took this tool that I picked up that is by, let's see, CreekBankCreations.com. And what it is it's just a sanding tool. And I found out about this tool from Miss Soft Brown, is her channel. She talked about how she uses this when she makes her mini albums and her scrapbooking page, and she does her scrapbooking pages. You should really check out her channel. She does some lovely, beautiful scrapbook albums. And so anyway, I took that tool and just ran it along the side here and all the way around to clean up my edges. And I have the small one and the big one. I use the smaller one to get in between the heel of the boot. The other thing that I did was, if you notice in the boot has this like hump protruding out. And I didn't like that. And Kathy actually cut hers off when she was doing her Ustream class. So I decided that I was going to cut that off too and make it look more like a typical boot. So then after I have all my lace on and I have everything on the way I wanted it, I then took and added some trim that I picked up at one of our local fabric stores. And then I added the bling on the top. And this is from a Joel Lee Christmas collection that had some beads on it. So that's how I made the boot. Now for the card, I'm going to go ahead and bring up my supplies. I took some Coordinations cardstock, and what I did was I took some iridescent gold glimmer mist, and I glimmer mist my card, and I also inked my edges using my Tim Holtz Distress ink, the tea dye, and distressed the edges after I heat set with the iridescent gold. Now my top layer is cut at, let me get that, 4 3/8 by 6 1/2. And I did the same thing. I glimmer mist it with iridescent gold. I don't know if the camera's going to pick that up. And then I took my embossing folder called Textiles, and I embossed it. I embossed it before I did the glimmer misting. And then I inked my edges with the tea dye Distress ink again. Now I've already added my ribbon on the other side, and you can see the paper does crimple up when you use the glimmer mist and then heat set it. But once you put it onto the card, it'll straighten back out. So I've added my ribbon already, and I cut my ribbon, I believe it was 8 inches. And I'm going to go ahead and adhere using my glue gun I'm going to go ahead and adhere my top layer down. So you get all the way in the corners and then down in the middle. And this is just some plain vanilla cardstock that I picked up. I believe it's some Recollections cardstock. It might even be Joann's. Those are the two that I usually use. So now I'm going to get this out the way. I'm going to go ahead and open up my card and lay down my top layer. Like so. And then, as I said before, I always take my hand and run it along the edges to make sure I've got it down the way I want it and make sure it's adhered. And I got a little bit of glue from the glue gun on there. Get that off of there. Okay, so now the next thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and add my flower. And this flower I picked up at Michael's. They were just some flowers that were on a end cap like this. I believe they were $1. They weren't in a dollar bin, but they were on an end cap, and they were half off. And I also took and glimmer mist this and heat set it, and the glimmer mist I used was the iridescent gold. So I know I want my flower to be about right there. And I removed the stem and everything off the back. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the glue gun, since this is plastic on the back, and I really need it to really stick down, and tape will not do it. And I'm going to go ahead and open my card up again and place it right there. And then I kind of hold it down just for a few seconds so that I know that it's going to stick and stay there, which it does. And I've warmed up my glue gun. I usually have it sitting here heating, getting warm. So the warmer or the hotter your glue gun is, the more it really adheres and sticks. So next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and I'm going to add my boot and lay out where I want it. And then I'm also going to use the glue gun for this as well, because I really want this to stick down, and I didn't want to use foam tape for this because I didn't want it to pop up. But it kind of will if you're using the glue gun, because once the glue gets settled, it kind of pops it up on its own. So I've got enough glue on there. I know it's gonna stick, and it's extremely hot as well. And I'm gonna lay it right there, and then I'm gonna press down, and there it is. And then my last thing I want to do is, you know what I have to add? That's right, I've got to add my bling. So I just have some gold rhinestones that I picked up at Michael's in the dollar bin. And I'm going to go ahead and add those. And I'll put one right there. Whoops. And I'm going to add one more, maybe two. Let's see. And then one right there. So there you have it. Now for my inside sentiment, I'm going to go ahead and put a personal message inside each card. One is for my mother and one is for my best girlfriend. So that's it. That is the last card of the Christmas cards with the Cricut. This is number 20. I decided the boot needed one more added touch. So I added some chain, which you can see right here. And then I made a beaded bead using Swarovski crystals and added that as a charm. So it looks, the beaded bead looks like this. I've already mailed out the cards that needed to be mailed. Most of them are being hand delivered to my family and my husband's family on Christmas Day. I hope you have enjoyed this series, and I also hope I was able to inspire all of you who have the Cricut, whether it be the original, the Create, the Expression, or even the Imagine, to go out and make some Christmas cards. It's never too late to get started on next year's cards. I, on the other hand, will need to get started on my birthday cards for the new year. So stay tuned for those. Happy holidays, and thanks for subscribing to my channel and the wonderful comments. Bye.